One Piece Season 2 is now out on Netflix. I have never seen the anime of One Piece. Well, that's a lie. I've seen the first 10 episodes of the anime. Why? Well, it was very hard to get into, and I just had to stop watching after 10 episodes, because everyone said it kept getting good about episode 40 in the show, and I'm like, the first 10 episodes are completely unwatchable. I'm just gonna skip right to the live action and see how I get invested from there. And I absolutely loved it. I binged season 1 in about 3 days, and the same thing goes for season 2. Ever since it came out, I was immediately invested into the storyline and just had to keep watching. Season 2 of One Piece still brought everything I loved about season 1, plus more. Let's talk about it. And I do think that this season is a huge step up from season 1. Not that season 1 was bad, I still absolutely love season 1, but a lot more of it is a lot more grounded compared to season 2. Season 2 is where I think the main story of One Piece is actually, and a lot of these characters, you now know the characters, you went through all the setup, so now we are in for the long run of One Piece. The reason why this show is as long as it is, in my opinion, because like I said, I haven't seen the anime. So now, this season actually officially starts and kicks off really the true story of One Piece and just these adventure that this crew goes on. So now that we know the characters, now that we went through the setup from these characters, we can now dive into the story. And that's exactly what this season does. And from the moment it starts, you're already invested into this world. You are brought right back into this world as if you never left in the first place. And this season still brings everything great that season 1 still brought. The world building is absolutely spectacular. You are invested into this world. You know everything about this world. The characters, again, you love every single character in the show because the show just makes you care so much about every single one of these characters. More on that later though. To me, season 2 just brought everything I loved about the season 1 version of the live action remake, but just decided to make the stakes 10 times bigger and was able to manage to top everything great about season 1. And I feel like every season from now on, it's just going to do that exact same thing. Now, I didn't mention higher stakes, but this entire season just has so much more stakes to it. And you're able to tell just from the very first episode with these new introduction to certain villains, from other things they decide to do throughout the entire season. There's just specific moments. The stakes are a lot higher. I'm at the edge of my seat. Let's see exactly what happens. And a lot of that is shown in about the last 4 episodes of the season, where a lot of the time I just wanted to binge it all in one sitting because I was so invested in what was happening. The show just wanted me to press play after every single episode, and every single episode always had a hook to it that always wanted to bring you back. And we get the introduction to a whole lot of new characters in this show, one of which I would assume is a fan favorite, which shows up towards the end of the season. And you just gotta love the new cast of characters in here because, like I said, season 1 made you care for the main crew members of the Straw Hats pirate ship. Season 2, of course, is going to bring new characters in, a whole lot of new stories and new stakes. Even what they're setting up for season 3, I am all in for and I cannot wait for. Because just what they do with these new characters, I'm still as invested to these characters as I am for the original cast of them. Because I feel like this season just does a really great job at even expanding more of world building. This show in general is so great at world building, and I feel like this season in particular, because we're going across island from island to island, I feel like this show is just so great at world building that every single new character always brings a new element to this world you didn't know before, and just always brings a new type of joy that the show then officially unlocks, and then you are even more invested into the show thanks to everything I just previously mentioned. Speaking of new characters though, that's where we get to the main part of the season that I absolutely loved. Every single new character introduced throughout the show, the creators, the original author, just adds this tragic backstory to the character that when watching it, you're just realizing what this character went through, the tragedy behind this character, and it makes you emotionally invested in that character, and it makes the season 10 times more darker, and I absolutely love that. I didn't mention how a fan favorite character shows up near the end of the season. That character has like the most traumatizing backstory in mankind. That character is probably the cutest of the entire show, and they decided to make that character have the most tragic backstory that I spent an entire episode just on that backstory alone, which makes me realize this character is 1, probably a fan favorite, and 2, probably has a certain meaning in the future in the rest of the show, making the season darker, more emotional, and I just love the new cast of characters all introduced because every single character, every single episode always had an element like that just made everything 10 times stronger than it was in season 1, because season 1 was, of course, the lot more fun side of the show. Now, yes, we did get some of those tragic backstories in there in season 1, but I feel like season 2 just completely stepped it up, and one of these reasons is why people love One Piece so much is because of the backstory elements like this. And basically everything I'm explaining is why people love the show of One Piece and the anime to begin with. Well, after all, there is a reason why it has over 1,000 episodes. And even after all of that, this season was still able to match the charm that season 1 was able to bring. The fun nature of the show, even with all this stakes, emotional weight, the darker side of the show, it still does end up keeping that same charm that made you fall in love with these characters in the first place. The Straw Hat crew, their chemistry together, all of that just makes you fall in love with the show even more. And I want to spend every second just watching this world come together. I want to see more of these characters, more of this world, and I might get into the anime now, after skipping the first few episodes, that is, because it's still extremely slow for me. I might now get into the anime a lot more, just because I now know the characters, I now know the direction, I want to spend more time in this world. I'm now invested into the world of One Piece. Now, with all that said, I do have a few nitpicks to do with the show. I am saying nitpicks right now only because there are about 1,000 episodes still coming that they still need to adapt, so of course I wasn't expecting much conclusion to this season. But I do feel like there are a lot of storylines throughout this season that are just forgot about. They just briefly mention it in episode 1 or even like episode 2, and then never gets touched on again, which was weird. Some conclusion to that would be nice. Same thing with some characters. It felt like episode 1 set certain characters up as just a threat that's going to show up throughout the entire season, and they don't really show up again till the end of it. So it makes that character come off as a waste, and why not introduce that character until next season? And by the end of the day, this season can feel like setup for stuff happening later on, especially with how this season tends to wrap up. But like I said, there's still 1,000 episodes yet to come, so these problems are not a huge problem for me, especially considering all the pros that this season had for me. It just left a huge impact, and I loved every second of watching this season. So overall, I absolutely ate up One Piece Season 2. It is quite clear that I feel like this live-action adaptation is going to be Netflix's go-to show. Since Stranger Things, Cobra Kai, all those shows wrapped up, I feel like Netflix is going to want to heavily market One Piece, the live-action remake version of it. And rightfully so, because this show is so great. I now want to get back into the anime, continue this world, because I'm so invested in these characters, the world building, the world in general, and just the great storytelling that this show has to offer. I absolutely ate up One Piece Season 2, and it was everything I hoped for. But anyways, if you like this video, maybe these ones on the subs, you too, like, subscribe, see you guys next time. Goodbye.